Have you ever felt like you're surrounded by people, yet still feel completely alone? It's as if there's a distance between you and everyone else, even in the most crowded places. You might be asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel isolated, even when the world seems full of people? Loneliness can be a deep, unsettling feeling, and it can be even more confusing when it feels like you're walking this journey by yourself. But what if I told you that this season of isolation might not be a coincidence? What if this time of solitude, though difficult, has a greater purpose, one that can bring you closer to God and to the person you were always meant to become? Today, we're going to dive into why God might be allowing this season of isolation in your life. This video is not only about understanding your loneliness, but also about recognizing how God can use it to shape you, refine you, and prepare you for something greater. It may not always feel easy, but there is purpose in your isolation. Many times, isolation can feel like a dark tunnel, a place where we are left to face our fears, our doubts, and our weaknesses. But in these very moments, God is shaping and refining us. While we might feel disconnected from the world and perhaps even from God Himself, He's actually drawing us closer to Him in a way that wouldn't be possible in the busyness of life. Isolation isn't the absence of God's presence. It's often the environment He chooses to prepare us for something greater. When we are stripped of distractions, it becomes an opportunity to hear His voice more clearly, to discern His will more precisely. What seems like abandonment is actually an invitation to deepen your relationship with Him, to grow in ways you never thought possible. God doesn't isolate us to punish us. Instead, He isolates us to equip us, to prepare us for the future He has planned. Just as Jesus withdrew to quiet places to pray and connect with His Father, God uses isolation to bring us to a deeper understanding of who He is and how much we truly need Him. So, if you're in a season of isolation right now, remember that this is not a time wasted. It is a time of growth, of learning, and of leaning into the presence of God in a way you may never have before. Trust that even in your solitude, God is working in you, refining your faith, your character, and your relationship with Him. God is not distant. In fact, it's often in these moments of isolation that He draws closest to us, inviting us to grow and to trust Him more deeply. Embrace the process, for it will lead you to a deeper, more fulfilling relationship with your Creator. God uses isolation to strengthen your faith. First and foremost, isolation is often a tool that God uses to strengthen our faith. When we are isolated, the world quiets down, and we are stripped of distractions. It's in these quiet, sometimes uncomfortable moments that God allows our faith to grow. The Bible reminds us in James 1:2-4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Isolated moments often feel heavy. They might feel like a burden, a time of waiting, or even loneliness. But in truth, these are the moments where God is doing His most important work in us. Just as gold is refined through fire, our faith is refined through trials and times of solitude. In the absence of distractions, we are given the precious opportunity to lean into God like never before. It's in these quiet, solitary moments that we learn to depend on God in ways that we could never learn in the noise of everyday life. You might not realize it right now, but every trial and every moment of isolation is building a stronger foundation for your faith. You are learning perseverance, endurance, and trust. These are not just empty moments, they are investments in your spiritual maturity. So, even when you feel disconnected, remember that God is working in you. This time of isolation is not punishment. It's an opportunity for you to deepen your trust in Him and to become spiritually stronger and more rooted. Through this process, your faith will grow, and when you come out of this season, you will find that you are more mature, more complete, and more steadfast in your relationship with God. God wants to teach you to depend on Him alone. Another reason God isolates us is to teach us to depend on Him and only Him for our strength, peace, and guidance. In a world filled with distractions, noise, and people, it's all too easy to place our trust in other things, whether it's a relationship, our career, or our own ability to control situations. But in isolation, God pulls us away from these temporary comforts and shows us that He is our ultimate source of provision and peace. Consider the story of the Israelites. They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, isolated from the rest of the world. During that time, they learned to rely solely on God for their every need. God provided manna from heaven, water from a rock, and protection from their enemies. They had no other option but to trust in God's provision. And, just like the Israelites, when we face isolation, we learn to depend on Him for everything. It is through isolation that we begin to fully understand that He is enough, that His presence is all we truly need. In today's world, it's easy to rely on our own understanding, our plans, or even others to get us through tough times. But God often uses isolation to pull us away from these distractions. He wants us to find rest, not in our accomplishments, not in the approval of others, but in His unchanging love and provision. During these times, we are forced to confront our dependency on the things of this world and realize that only God can give us true peace, guidance, and strength. Through isolation, God teaches us a deeper lesson, the lesson that we are never alone, even when we feel like we are. He is the one who sustains us, provides for us, and carries us through. This season of being alone is a gift that helps us rediscover God as our true source of strength. And when we learn to depend on Him fully, we will find that He provides everything we need in every season of life. Isolation is a time of personal growth and transformation. Another profound reason God isolates us is for personal growth. Isolation, though often challenging, can be a powerful tool in God's hands for refining our character. When we're alone, the noise of the world fades away, and the distractions that pull us in different directions are silenced. It is in this stillness that God has the space to work deeply within our hearts. He reveals parts of us we may have ignored or been unaware of, such as wounds that need healing, areas of pride, or weaknesses that need strengthening. Sometimes we don't realize how much we carry with us, the burdens, the unhealed wounds, and the unhealthy attachments, until we are alone. During isolation, God creates the space for us to honestly look at ourselves without the distractions of everyday life. It is here that He reveals areas in our character that need refining, areas of sin or doubt that need His healing touch. And as we begin to let go of these things, He replaces them with His peace, His strength, and His love. God uses solitude to refine us, just like a craftsman shapes raw material into something beautiful. It might feel uncomfortable to confront our flaws or painful to face our past mistakes, but this is where transformation happens. God is not punishing you by isolating you. He's giving you the opportunity to become the person He created you to be. He is shaping your character, building your patience, refining your compassion, and teaching you to be more Christ-like. It's in these quiet, isolated moments that God can heal the wounds we've carried for so long and make us whole again. Though this process may be painful at times, it is essential for growth. We might think we know ourselves, but God knows us deeply, and He sees areas we can't. He lovingly draws us into isolation so that we can fully understand who we are in His eyes and what He desires to do through us. In isolation, you will emerge stronger, more compassionate, more aware of His love for you, and more prepared to face the challenges that lie ahead. Isolation prepares you for God's greater purpose. Sometimes God isolates us not just for personal growth, but because He is preparing us for something greater, something beyond our current understanding. Think of the story of Moses. Before he was called to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, he spent 40 years in the wilderness, isolated from the world. It was in that season of solitude that Moses learned to trust God fully, gained wisdom, and grew in humility. God shaped his character during those years, preparing him for the monumental task ahead. In the wilderness, Moses didn't know what God had in store for him, but God was at work molding him into the leader He needed him to be. Similarly, during times of isolation in our own lives, God is shaping us for a future we may not yet see. We may feel like we're in a season of waiting, a time where we're stuck or uncertain, but God uses this time to refine us, to equip us with the character, wisdom, and strength we need for the calling He has for our lives. God doesn't waste a single season. Every moment of isolation, every moment of waiting, is part of His greater plan. Just like Moses, you may feel like you're wandering in the wilderness, but God is using this time to equip you for something much greater. Maybe you're being prepared for a leadership role, a new ministry, or an opportunity to serve others in ways you never imagined. You may not see it now, but God is working behind the scenes, shaping you to be the person who will fulfill His greater purpose in your life. God is refining you during this season of isolation so that you will be ready when the time comes for you to step into your calling. You are being prepared for something much larger than yourself. Whether you feel it or not, God is equipping you with the wisdom, strength, and humility you need to walk in the purpose He has set before you. Just as He did with Moses, He will use this season to give you everything you need to accomplish His will. Trust that He is preparing you even when it feels like you are in the waiting room of life. God wants to protect you from unhealthy influences. Isolation can often be God's loving way of protecting you from negative influences that may be surrounding you. As we walk through life, it's easy to find ourselves caught up in toxic relationships, unhealthy environments, or situations that drain our energy and peace. These things can subtly, yet powerfully, pull us away from God's plan and from the people we are meant to be. God, in His mercy, may allow you to experience isolation to shield you from these harmful environments. It's not because He wants to punish you, but because He loves you deeply. He sees the emotional and spiritual toll that certain people or situations have on your heart, and so He draws you away from them. This withdrawal gives you the space to heal, to process, and to strengthen your relationship with Him. Remember, God's protection doesn't mean you're being abandoned. Rather, it's His grace and mercy at work. During times of isolation, He is helping you grow in discernment, teaching you how to recognize what is good for your soul and what is not. Just as a parent might shield a child from danger, now God is shielding you from people or situations that could lead you astray or hurt you emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. This protection is not about making you feel alone or rejected. It's about God's loving intervention, helping you see the places in your life that need healing. He's creating space for your heart to mend and to be filled with His peace. You're learning to build a stronger foundation that isn't swayed by others' opinions or the chaos of unhealthy relationships. This time of solitude helps you reset, rebuild, and learn to stand firm in His truth and love. Isolation deepens your relationship with God. Finally, isolation isn't just a time of protection. It's an opportunity for you to deepen your relationship with God. Think of it like any meaningful relationship you've had. The more time you spend with someone, the more you understand them, the more you grow together. It's no different with God. When you're alone with Him, you have the space to draw near to His heart. Isolation, while often seen as a time of loneliness, is actually a precious time to cultivate intimacy with the Creator. In these quiet moments, God is inviting you into a deeper communion with Him. When the noise of the world quiets down, His voice becomes clearer. And it's in that stillness that you begin to understand His love for you on a deeper level. Think of it as a kind of spiritual bonding. When you spend extended time with someone, you get to know them more deeply. God uses isolation to draw near to you, to speak to you in a way that is intimate and personal. It's in these moments that He reveals more about His nature, His desires for your life, and His plans for you. You can feel His presence more deeply, hear Him more clearly, and understand the depth of His love for you. It's not just about enduring loneliness. It's about using this time to grow in your understanding of who God is. This season is an invitation to experience God's love in new and profound ways. He wants to show you just how much He cares, how much He desires to be with you, and how He can transform your life from the inside out. In isolation, you can come face to face with the deepest truths of God's heart, truths that may have been hidden beneath the busyness of life. During this time of solitude, you are invited to listen, to be still, and to let God's voice penetrate your heart. It's here, in this sacred space of silence, that you can encounter His presence like never before. God is calling you into a deeper relationship, a relationship built on trust, intimacy, and love. And this time of isolation, though challenging, is a gift that allows you to grow closer to Him than ever. So, if you're feeling isolated, know that God is doing something powerful in your life. It might not be clear right now, but each moment of solitude is an opportunity for transformation. God uses isolation to strengthen your faith, to help you depend on Him more fully, and to prepare you for a greater purpose that is unfolding in your life. You may not see it today, but trust that He is at work in you, shaping you into the person He wants you to become. It's easy to want to rush through these seasons of loneliness, but God's timing is perfect. Don't resist the process. Embrace it. Embrace the stillness, embrace the silence, and allow God to mold you in ways you cannot yet comprehend. It's in these moments of solitude that God often reveals to us things we didn't know about ourselves, and where we can encounter Him in ways we couldn't in the busyness of life. During this time, you may be learning to hear God's voice more clearly. As you let go of distractions and false comforts, He draws nearer. In these quiet moments, He whispers to your heart, teaching you things about His love, His plans, and His goodness. Know that you are being prepared for what lies ahead. This time is not wasted, and though it might feel heavy or lonely now, the growth that's happening within you will bear fruit in due time. Remember, you are never truly alone. God is with you. Even in the deepest moments of loneliness, He is guiding you, protecting you, and shaping you into the person He has called you to be. Every step you take is under His watchful eye, and He has a good plan for your life. Stay patient in this season, stay faithful, and trust that God is working all things together for your good. Thank you for watching. We hope that this video has helped you understand the deeper purpose behind times of isolation and has encouraged you to trust in God's timing. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing for more content like this. We'd love to hear your story. How have you experienced God's presence during a season of isolation? Share with us in the comments below.